You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Pace Radio Show. It's July 26th, and we are live here at paceradio.net and cbgtv.com. I'm Al Graham, and my joint host, Tamara Cartwright, has the evening off, so I'm going to be going alone as far as with my guest, and a guest who has been educating and informing patients about cannabis for over 30 years. That's right, 30 years, folks. But first, a quick review of the Smoke Signals Indigenous Cannabis Cup on the Mohawk territory of Taginaga here in Ontario, just east of Belleville, Ontario is where this was held. I attended with other Pace Radio Network host Green Irene on behalf of CBG TV, and which we were both part of. It was what we found throughout the weekend. It was great working, but networking with other businesses, sort of in a business-to-business situation. I found that there was more vendors than last year. The variety of products was great. This included hash, and cannabis, of course, concentrates, beverages, candies, chocolates, lotions, and there was even a nose inhaler, which I found, wow, I've never seen a nose inhaler for cannabis at any event that I've been to. You could even buy kettle corn from Dr. Buck's Sweet Treats. Mind you, it wasn't infused, but it was still delicious. And while I can't eat it, I can tell you that my wife Gail just loves the stuff. The blue stuff, the raspberry, I believe is what it's called. There were crafters there selling hand-carved wooden products, including the trophies for the Indigenous Cannabis Cup. Jewelry, resin products such as rolling trays, ashtrays, jewelry. There were 3 broadcasters there, including CBG TV, and one that I hadn't heard of before, and that was Quadcast. I found it at quadcast.ca. We had a great chat with the guys. We shared some information. They have lots of audio content, plus they also do some live podcasts. And I believe that we'll be talking to them some more down the road, and probably pretty soon. And let's see what else. The music was great. I didn't get to see or hear all the musical performers that were in attendance, that were there. But the music was good. We met Devin and Tommy of the Kush Band. They drove all the way up from the East Coast. And I got to see some of our past guests here from the show, such as Lisa White of Leaflets, Jennifer Pixie of Mary Jane Yards, and Ashley Clea of SFG Bakery. Irene and I went around and introduced ourselves to everyone, and it was good to hear people say that they had heard of us and were watching our programs. Many told us to keep up the good work, which we're going to do. And with CBG and the things, part of the problem we ran into while we were there and doing the broadcast, and that was the heat. It was so hot down there. And if you leave your phone out on the deck for a few minutes in the blazing sun, it's going to tell you it's too hot. And that's no different when you're walking around with it on a selfie stick and trying to do some broadcasting. It's out there in the sun. It got too hot. And we actually went through 3 phones trying to deal with this. And cross your fingers that the phones aren't going to need some replacing, because it seems the battery life's just not quite as long as it used to be. So. But other than that, what do you say? I think it's time for me to continue the good work that these people told us we were doing, and it's time for me to introduce this evening's guest, Al Byrne. He's been a cannabis advocate, as I said, for over 30 years. He's been a director at NORML. He's founded organizations that help people like himself, people who are veterans, plus much more. Like it's he's got a huge list of accomplishments and things that he's been involved with. So let's dig into that. At this time, I'd like to welcome my guest for tonight, Al Byrne, to the Pace Radio Show. G'day, Al. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for the invitation, Al. We got two Al's here tonight.
It's right. We call that Al squared around here. Well, Al, as I mentioned, you've got quite the list of things that you've been involved with over the years. Why don't you give us just a quick review of some of the things that you've been involved in throughout these years?
Well, my story really started with cannabis back in '67, but I didn't do anything. Yeah, I didn't do anything formal with that involvement until 1983. When I joined with my wife at the time, Mary Lynn, to do a study for NORML about medical use of cannabis by patients. And that led me eventually to be on the board of NORML for 4 or 5 years. I was the co-executive director of NORML for a couple of years, I guess it was, the national secretary for 3 or 4 years. And I left NORML to co-found, again with Marilyn Mathry, Patients Out of Time, a 501c3 educational charity with the mission, as we defined it, to educate healthcare professionals and the general U.S. public about the medical uses of cannabis. Now, that we founded that organization in 1995. We didn't pull off the first major education until 5 years later, when Patients Out of Time, along with the University of Iowa Medical School and Nursing School, sponsored the first medical cannabis conference in the United States, possibly the world, which was accredited. You know, there's been a lot of conferences where people get up and talk, but this conference was accredited, meaning the American Medical Association and the American Nurses Association authorized educational credits for doctors, nurses, social workers that attended this thing. And so that was Patients Out of Time. And that went on very, very successfully for well over a decade. But along the way, I was approached by a partner of mine that I'd worked with at Patients Out of Time many times, a veteran named Michael Kravitz. And we're both in Virginia at the time. And Michael and I formed an organization still in existence. It's called Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access. Access being able to use medical cannabis within Veterans Administration health facilities. Again, we're talking, I know you're in Canada, we're talking U.S. here. Only.
Correct,
and,
yeah.
So anyway, we formed in 2007. By 2010, mainly with Michael's work, I was there, but he was really there. The Veterans Administration of the United States of America, the largest health organization in the world, put in writing that cannabis was a medicine and that cannabis should be treated as such by all the employees in medicine that work for the Veterans Administration of the United States, which was a huge deal. Overnight, literally hundreds of thousands, if not a couple of million veterans who wanted to use cannabis now could use cannabis and be treated in veterans facilities. Prior to that, they could not. So it was either you're in or you're out. Now we are in, period. I got a problem with that still, but I'll move on. So that took us 3 years, but we're still, Mike and I, and it's all volunteer, by the way. Patients Out of Time, when I was there, was a 100% volunteer organization. Nobody took anything, not anything. Same way with Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access. Every vet that works with us, I mean, it's a big gang of, nobody's the boss, right? All volunteers. And that really works. It appeals to me because nobody has ever been to say Al Byrne's owned by somebody. Al's Byrne, he takes money from something, and therefore he's got a bias or a prejudice. Never did it. And that's the same thing with our veterans organization. Right now, what we're dealing with is the problem in our states in the United States is there's lists. Even if cannabis is legal as medicine in a given state, let us just pick one, Massachusetts. It's legal in Massachusetts to have medical cannabis. But there's a list in Massachusetts, and I don't know what it is, but there's a list. And what that list is, it is what you can use that cannabis for medically. What a doctor or attending physician can say to you, you can use it for this, but you can't use it for that. Well, I got a huge problem with that one. I don't know of any other medical treatment or medical potion or whatever that is decided if I can have it or not by cops and lawyers. Yeah, that's what these lists are. They're made up by legislators, and that to me is the stupidest thing I've ever run into. But there it is. And these educated lawyers, guys, and they're doing this stupid stuff. Anyway, that's what VMCA still does. Now, I'm also working very well with another volunteer veteran organization. This one is international. We have memberships from Australia and United Kingdom, from Ukraine, Israel, etc. And what it is, it's a bunch of vets, again, volunteers, very skilled in the nuances of the cannabis information, both nationally and internationally. And what we have done is we've got ourselves designated by the United Nations and WHO, World Health Organization, to be a veteran spokesperson on behalf of veterans internationally in relationship to cannabis.
That's huge. Yes.
Yeah, it's huge. And I can go on and on about this international thing, but we've made the United States is in a spot that it's another story. The United States is not responding to its own treaty obligations, et cetera.
Okay, now did you say what Did you say what the group was that is being recognized?
I'm sorry, I probably didn't. We call ourselves the Veterans Action Council. That would be .org. We're on Facebook, YouTube. If you look for a history of what we do every other week, pretty well, every other week, is we interview a cannabis expert. These experts could be in the medical field.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh.
It's all right.
I just lost my camera vision. Okay, good. These experts could be in the medical field. They could be somebody that's an expert in international commerce or interstate commerce. How are we going to move this stuff around? All of that. So we have about an hour interview program with 6 vets. I'm one of the interviewers. And then we tape it, and it's on YouTube, and it's on Facebook, and all that stuff.
Good.
And again, it's veteran oriented. The subject matter always leans towards veteran issues because that's what we are. We're an action council. Yeah. We've also got a couple of interesting things going. One is internationally. I'll just shorten it up for you. Just trust me. But internationally, in 2000, the international treaty that the United States is obligated to about drug control was changed as far as cannabis was concerned. But basically, the treaty removed it from the prohibited statute and put it in. It's no problem. It's different numbers, but I don't want to get confused with anybody. So anyway, what that does in the United States law, it triggers by law that the Attorney General of the United States of America is obligated, I say again, by law, when the treaty changes some sort of schedule process on cannabis or any other drug. Of course, cannabis isn't a drug, it's a plant. But anyway, that's another subject. When it changes the scheduling, the Attorney General must change the scheduling of our own schedule here in the United States. Well, he didn't.
No.
And we waited politely. We, the Veterans Action Council, waited very politely for a year. Hey, we give him some time, right? And then we wrote him a letter, and we said, hey, basically what I just told you all, guys. And of course, we didn't get a reply. But then we got a hold of the White House, and we talked to one of President Biden's advisors on international stuff, because this is an international treaty. And this gentleman had no idea what we were talking about. We work in a rather little narrow, nuanced world, but we know it really well. And so when the White House representative heard our story, and the Attorney General, et cetera, he said, wow, we're going to do something. Now, all I can tell you is that about a week later, President Biden said at a press conference a sentence that we said to this man in the White House about the Attorney General getting off his ass and doing his job. He still hasn't, by the way. The other interesting thing, I think especially your veterans up in Canada or wherever you're here, a veteran here is going to.
Yeah, I'm actually.
Now,
I'm about an hour. I'm about an hour north of the Trenton Air Force Base, which is one of our largest, if not the largest, here in Canada.
Correct. Yeah, you've got vets all over the place there. So
correct.
This should be interesting for everybody listening to this.
That's right. Exactly.
Granting veterans to use cannabis, that was in 2010. So this is 13 years has gone by where veterans, millions and millions of people, men, women, every age, every conflict, have gone to the Veterans Health Administration in the United States, have said, I use cannabis, and they've been treated and treated well. So we wrote the VHA quite a while ago now, a few months ago, and said, so what happened? You know, what happened? Millions of people have just reported to you they use cannabis for this, for that, for this, for that. What happened? And they wrote back and they said, we can't find anything like that. We don't know what happened. So we didn't quit right then. We did it again a different way within the bureaucratic system. Actually, the system recommended we do it a different way, and maybe we'd have a different outcome. So we've done it that second way. And we also have a little congressional help. Congresswoman Mace from South Carolina, federal, signed on to the letter. I'm the signature, but she signed on with me to this thing. So we have a request out, and we think it's legitimate. You've treated hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of veterans using cannabis. What happened? You know,
why is it
I'll tell you what I think happened.
Why is it still Schedule 1? You got all these millions of veterans who are on it using cannabis to treat themselves. But yet they say there's no medicinal benefit.
Logical answer to that question. Why is it in Schedule 1? There is no logical answer to that question.
Now, and didn't Biden say something about reviewing something along that line? And then, like you mentioned about, this
it was
Veterans Action Council.
Yeah, I was involved with this Attorney General stuff, this general thing where he said, look, we got to review this. We got to look at this. And that's all about that Attorney General White House conversation. Yes. So, and then Biden has also promised, I'm not sure how much activity, but he did say that they would release from federal penitentiaries any nonviolent cannabis offender. I don't know what that number would be, and I don't know if that's been done, but he said,
Yeah,
let's do it.
From the report that I had seen on the news on that, they said they're federal prisoners, and there wasn't very many in the federal end of things for just simple possession. Most of the people were state, and the federal government can't touch them. That was one thing that I had read on it, anyways. But nevertheless, it's there, to release people for nonviolent cannabis possession. It doesn't make sense to, like, what are you doing that for? So, but
we have had a couple of governors here in the States, maybe more than a couple, have issued blanket pardons, if you will, to all previous state and expunged their records, meaning the official police record of cannabis and having a problem is gone, just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So there is a movement down. Yeah. And
yeah. We have two news programs here. We're a news program that airs twice a week here on the Pace Radio Network. So, we follow some of the stuff that's going on, obviously around the world. And it's just, we just can't believe that, you're at that schedule at one end of things with all this information and all that. And we see the states that are doing this, that are, legalizing it or legalizing it for medical purposes. But it's still at the top end. So hopefully something can be done.
Well, the law in the United States says that if there's any medical utility proven in any part of the United States that cannabis is a medicine, then the federal schedule must be rescheduled. Well, hell, I mean, we've got 40 states, DC, every territory has said it's a medicine. So, by law, the United States should have rescheduled. They don't even pay. They pay attention to this government. These governments, it's not just this guy, it's everybody. They pay attention to the law they want to pay attention to. But we can read, and we know this is wrong.
Like you were talking about expungements there. Like, when we watch that, I was talking about the news and watching that on the news, and we see where state after state after state, that's written into a law, it's, just signed by the governor. But here in Canada, we didn't do that. The only thing that the federal government did is they waived their fee. Now, the person was still responsible for any other costs along the way, as well as collecting up any information that needs to be done in order for the pardon to be submitted. They would also have to submit it and go through the whole process. Individual cases. Whereas down there in the States, we're seeing, like I said, we're seeing you guys just sign it and thinking, geez, wish we had that here in Canada.
Yeah, well, the states down here have, if there's 40 states, there's 40 different ways they're doing it. But I can assure you that at the bottom of it is how much money can we suck out of this now?
Yeah.
There's very little compassion shown. It's more about regulation and licenses and it's not what I spent my now is not. I didn't know what was going to happen back when we started this thing.
No,
this
exactly.
is what happened.
But that's what it takes.
This is what
it takes people to speak up.
Well, that's a long story too. I mean, back when I started, if you said, well, of course, cannabis was not used very much. The word was marijuana, or pot or grass or some sort of slang. Back in, let's say, the 60s, when this whole thing came to light, if you will.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast that you've been involved in cannabis since 1967.
Yeah, well, I graduated from Notre Dame in 1965. I had been a jock there. I played football and rugby for 4 years. I got my commission in the Navy program, and I was stationed on a destroyer on the east coast of the United States in Norfolk, Virginia, when my father came down with liver cancer. And I'll put the story up, but he was dying. That was obvious. He was in chemotherapy treatment, which is shitty now, but it was brutal. But I can imagine what this was in '67 chemotherapy. My word.
Yeah, I can just imagine.
He was, yeah, he's a very, very sick man. He, constant nausea, lost 100 pounds, et cetera, et cetera. He was dying.
Yeah.
And he tried cannabis. He had been a smoker. He had smoked cigarettes. He tried cannabis. And literally within 10 or 15 seconds, he told me, I feel better. Wow, boy, just all of a sudden feel better. And he took a couple of more hits. And I went down the kitchen. This was at our house. I went down the kitchen and made him a sandwich, and he ate it. He died 2 months later. But I was a young ensign in the Navy, and I just saw something. And everything I had been told about cannabis, marijuana, and what I just saw with my own dad left a big hole. I was like, wait a minute, something isn't working in my life. And so nothing really happened after that until I met my ex-wife, wife in the Navy. We met her in the Navy. She's a nurse. And she wanted to get a master's degree, so I got the Navy to send me for the last 2 years in the Navy. I did 24 years, and then I retired. I retired in Cleveland, Ohio, where my wife went to Case Western Reserve University and got her master's degree in nursing. And as her final project to get the master's, she had to produce a thesis of something. And we discussed it, and I had talked to her, of course, about my dad's use of cannabis when he was dying. And she had the opportunity as a nurse to be in an experimental program with the University of Washington back in like 1981, where she administered liquid cannabis to a patient in Washington. And so she saw that patient do well. Anyway, she did the thesis on this is really the beginning. What this story is going to be, the beginning of medical cannabis in the modern era. We got with NORML. This is 1983, and we asked them to send out a questionnaire through their mailing list, which was roughly 5,000. And then we asked them to take that questionnaire back in, receive it, wipe it of any identifying names, phone numbers, addresses, just the information, and send it to us. NORML did that. They sent out 5,000, and astronomically, we got back like 4,200, 4,400. It was incredible. Usually you get back about 8%, maybe like that. We got back like 90. It was crazy. So we had a lot of work to do, but Marilyn and I sat down in the basement of this place, was at Case Western University Hospital one evening after evening after evening, going through this massive paperwork. And it became obvious to the two of us. We just looked at each other, and I'm telling you, I think the word was epiphany. Because up to then, actually, all the work, everything we knew, cannabis was a good medicine for glaucoma, and it was great as an antiemetic, keep you from vomiting if you have nausea. That's basically what had been passed down to the 1960s, the 1970s. That's it. And so here we're sitting in this basement, and these people are writing in, 4,500 of them. And they were black, they were white, they were green. They made nothing or they made $500,000 a year. They were from 17 years old to 77 years old. There was everything. And here's what they said. We asked, the thesis simply said, if you use cannabis medically, would you tell your doctor and nurse that you do? That was a basic question. Yes or no? Find out if the people trusted their medical professionals enough to discuss cannabis in 1983. And the answer was about 88% of them, I think it was, said yes.
Really?
It was another question.
Wow.
Yeah. It was very, very positive.
Yeah.
And then just at the end, Mary Lynn put like a general question, like a write-in,
Yeah.
Because they're saying, I use cannabis. So Mary Lynn says, well, what are you using it for? Well, here comes the epiphany, guys. I mean, what we just started reading. I use it for morning sickness. I use it for sickle cell. I use it to stop spasms. I use it for pain. I use it for Crohn's disease. I use it for migraine headaches. I use it for my labor pains. On and on. And I use it for glaucoma. And I use it as an antiemetic. But it was all the other stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And that, I'm telling you, that basement in Cleveland, that's the beginning of the modern medical cannabis movement, because that thing, she got her master's degree with that thesis. Let me tell you, NORML used it and publicized it greatly because it opened up the world. And so by the time I got to running NORML back in like 89 or something like that, the NORML was a lawyer, essentially whatever it started to be. By then, it was nothing more than a phone booth for lawyers. And say I get busted, and NORML would have a lawyer they could call in Iowa. That's basically what it was. It was crazy, and it was broke. It was way broke, going down, just falling apart. But anyway, we got there. Three of us put it back together, and after with what and then I'll tell you another story.
Hang on before you go into another story. Let's go for break, and then we'll come back with that story. How's that? All right. Okay. If we go for break, it's time to let everybody know those who help us make our guests' voices louder. Then after the break, I'll continue our discussion with my guest here, Al Byrne. This is Pace Radio Show. We're live here at paceradio.net and cbgtv.com.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
Are you looking to get your medical cannabis grow license? Limestone City Hydroponics can help patients through the process of obtaining their license to grow medical cannabis. What's that? You don't have a doctor. If you meet the medical criteria, Limestone City Hydroponics has a nurse practitioner who can assess and provide medical cannabis prescriptions. What are you waiting for? Contact Limestone City Hydroponics at limestonecityhydroponics.ca or call them at 613-548-0420.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Cannabis edibles are an effective way to manage pain and other ailments, especially when you deal with your trusted partner, Legacy 420, in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. You see, we lab test every product on site to ensure proper dosage every time, which is critical when consuming cannabis edibles. All Legacy 420 edibles are made by our classically trained baker and chocolatier, and we also have super tasty vegan options.
Our baker has been in the industry for 25 years. She's also a chocolatier. Everything from savory to sweet, your chocolate bars, brownies, butter tarts, you name it, we make it.
Talk to our knowledgeable Cannatex about our incredible variety available. Give your trusted partners a call. Legacy 420 out on your road.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
We're live here at paceradio.net and cbgtv.com. And don't forget, if you missed the live shows, you can always catch the podcast afterwards at paceradio.com and at paceradio.net or paceradioshow.com and paceradio.net. Tomorrow has the night off, but tonight I've been joined by my guest, the man who's been helping veterans, and that's Al Byrne. But Al disappeared all of a sudden over the break, and I'm just waiting for him to come back in. Unfortunately, it's not something you can just pick up the phone and give him a call and find out what happened. And I've checked my emails, and I haven't found anything yet. And hopefully he'll be back shortly. Al is a veteran of the Navy, and he's been involved in many things over the years. He got started on many of them in the first segment of the broadcast, but I'm just looking for his information here. I can just run through some of this for you. He talked about being the founder for Cannabis Patients Out of Time, co-founder, I should say. He got, I believe, involved with that with Marilyn Mantry. It says here that they educate U.S. Nursing and medical professionals about the therapeutic uses of cannabis. And hopefully the website is still the same, and that's medicalcannabis.com. I actually met Al years ago, probably 10, 12 years ago, not in person, but just through radio when I first got started in this, and that was at Time for Hemp, and that's where Patients Out of Time was broadcasting. So I got to hear lots about Al back in the day, and when I saw his name listed on LinkedIn, that's where I found him, that I had to get him on the broadcast and talk to him, because I knew of the work that he had done in dealing with patients. And as you know, we like to share patient stories here on the Pace Radio Show. Figures. Okay, what else down there? He's been helping people not only through Patients Out of Time, which turned into this broadcast as well. He was involved in he's a founding director of Veterans for Medical Marijuana Access. There he is. He's back. Hey, Al, you made it back. I'm not sure what happened, but I came back from the commercial break and you're gone. But
I think it's at my end. It's Northwest Florida thunderstorms. I'm on a satellite system, so I think we just had that kind of problem.
All right.
But yeah, I'm back until we faded.
Okay. All right. Now, just before correct.
Yeah.
All right. Go on with the story. I was just giving people a bit of information about you while I wait for you to come back. So before the break, you were telling a story, and continue.
Yeah. Well, this was taking control of NORML back in 1990. It was pretty broke. We got it so that it was functional.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a real pivotal year and a real pivotal moment for medical cannabis again. Even though we had identified all these new diseases and problems that cannabis could help, the medical community didn't pay any attention to what we knew. And, it was just normal after all, and they're a legalization outfit. So anyway, the two things happened. One is kind of funny. If you guys know about hemp, your audience, you'll have to recognize the name Jack Herr. And the first time, the first time I ever met Jack was at a NORML board meeting in Washington, D.C. It was probably 1989. We were having a meeting, and one of the staff came in and said, "Hey, there's a guy out here from California, and he just wants 10 minutes of your time. Can you guys see him? He's come a long way." And we said, yeah, bring him in, So in comes Jack. And I'm telling you right now, he had the worst fitting and ugliest sport coat on I've ever seen. It's kind of like that Michael Quarterball colors thing, that coat of all colors, but this thing just even didn't even say it fit. It's just ridiculous. Anyway, so what he was proud of is that this limp thing he's got, which he's waving around and showing us, was hemp. It was all made from hemp. And what he wanted that day was he wanted hemp, H period, E period, M period, P period, which NORML had copyrighted. So I want the history books to know the board of directors unanimously gave Jack Herr the word hemp to do as he pleased. And of course, he did great things with the word. But that gave me an idea when I got talking to this guy, and over the years, we became quite friendly. But back in that time, I said, "What are you doing, Jack?" And he said, "I'm going to take hemp and I'm going to make it a household word. I'm going to let people know this is good stuff," which of course he did. And I thought, well, wait a minute. Oh, we got medical cannabis. Maybe we should do something to make it a household word. We've got the info, just like Jack had the info on the environment and how good it all that.
I read his book.
So basically, my tenure at NORML was very divisive. A lot of people did not like me when I ran that place because they were what I would say is purists. NORML was founded to be a legalization outfit, a proposition I have no problem with. But as a soldier, remember, 24 years in the Navy, as a soldier, I was taught, there's strategy and there's tactics, et cetera, et cetera. Well, NORML and people like us were up against the federal government of the United States, head to head on legalization. And it really wasn't working too well. But Jack and me, we said, hey, Jack, by the way, is another Army sergeant, an Army man, a veteran. All these guys that did in America are all veterans, by the way. So Jack's taken the federal government on a whole nother goose chase, hemp. So I decided I'm going to take the government on another goose chase. We're going to talk medical cannabis as a separate issue. Legalization still sits there. So all of a sudden, within a 2 or 3 period, the federal government didn't have one target. They had 3. We broke them down a little bit. And that diversion was another step for medical cannabis. Then the luckiest thing happened in America that year. NORML had its NORML conference yearly. It was not accredited. It was just everybody getting up and having their opinion. Most of the opinions were well done, very crafted, but they were just opinions. But we got the first 5 federal patients to appear on stage and talk about their use of federal cannabis for their different problems. Now, all 5 of these people were mature men and female, business suits, coat and tie, stockbrokers, teachers, very, very respectable people. Very, very sick, helped very, very much by this miserable American cannabis. Well, the best part of that weekend turned out to be that C-SPAN decided that they were going to cover this entire medical cannabis conference. This was not accredited, but nobody had done this before. They hadn't been a medical cannabis conference in D.C. ever. So what's this all about? So C-SPAN came. We got lucky. They came. They spent the whole 2 days. They broadcast this thing once every 8 hours, so 3 times a day for 30 days straight.
Oh.
And NORML used to get about 400 phone calls a week. And generally they were, again, I got busted, I need a lawyer. That next week, there was 40,000 phone calls came in from everybody, from school kids to movie stars, calling up and saying, what can I do for you guys on this medical cannabis issue? And that was another weekend that changed the conversation of the United States about this issue, and I believe the world. If the United States wouldn't have had the decision, probably nobody else would have either. So these were monumental steps. They were helped along by NORML, the people that worked there at the time, none of whom are remembered. I know them, but it was a series of lucky breaks, goodwill people, and people like those in the management at C-SPAN that believed in freedom of speech. That was so. Those are to me, those are the big moments that broke the ice, and then our Patients Out of Time conference series continued. We kept every time, and we had international speakers, and the diversions were amazing, and everything got better and better. And yet, even with all the good information we would bring into the discussion, the media in the United States or anywhere else seemed completely oblivious to the conversation. It's been remarkable. But anyway, those are the moments that I think changed the discussion towards what we have ended up with today. I'm not real happy with where we ended up, but I'm a lot happier we're here than then. Back in those days, everybody I worked with feared that going to jail. We're going to prison. We're doing this. They're going to come get us.
Exactly.
And a lot of us got along the way. So there was a risk there that isn't understood right now. No one's asking for a medal, but it wasn't easy at all. It was dangerous, and the governments, not just our government, but a lot of governments were, they're big time. There's a lot of money involved, and
for sure.
It still is, the cartels, but that's another subject.
Yeah. Now, when you're talking about Jack Hare there, and you mentioned the hemp, it reminded me, because I used to do a documentary series. I did it for 5 years in different cafes, and one of the videos that I showed every April was on Jack Hare and the hemp help eliminate marijuana prohibition.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Jack was a hell of a showman too. I mean, he could get his point across. He was well spoken, friendly guy. He had I think a rather novel, unique relationship with Jack. We were not friends, but at the time, back then, being a veteran and being involved in the cannabis community, we were considered. We were to be watched, and even though what I did, Jack did, and Dennis Perone did, we were to be watched. Maybe these guys really aren't what they say they are, or something. But Jack was very proud of his service. but he did not want to talk about it in public. And so he talked to me about it. And I talked to him about mine. And it was those kinds of veteran conversations that we can have with each other, and we can understand what's going on in the other guy's head. And hopefully we say the right thing to, everybody moves on and everything's fine. So Jack had a lot of those conversations. I do remember one time, though, a Jack story that probably never heard before, is he came back from Europe. He was over there doing something, and he was sick. He had eaten some cheese or something like that in the Netherlands. And by the time he got to New York, he was sick. So he was holed up in some hotel trying to get well. So to entertainment, I guess, he called me up to tell me he was, sick. I'm like, what do you want me to do? Anyway, he told me this story. So he's in Ireland, and he's walking around with a farmer, and they're talking about how Ireland would be great for growing hemp crops and stuff, and the farmer's into it and all that stuff. And then the farmer says, hey, I feed this stuff to my chickens and, hemp seed and stuff to my chickens and stuff. We can do that over here. And Jack, he says, well, you know about the fishing? Jack says, what fishing? What? And he says, look, come on, I'll show you. So he gets a cup or two of hemp seeds, straight up hemp seeds. And he walks a little while with Jack out to his farm pond, and he takes a handful of these seeds and just scatters them out over the top of the pond as far as he can, 50, 60 of them. And the fish come up from nowhere, and every seed's just gone, just that quick. So I never thought about using hemp as a fish.
Yeah. Fish bait, you bring them up to the surface.
I'm just giving a whole new industry a boost. Okay.
It just
Jack
goes
was
to show
quite the
you,
guy.
even the fish know the benefits of it.
Yeah. Those guys were ahead of their time, all of them. They're all ahead of their time.
I know at the end of the movie, he always there was always he always talked about the story about the warships of 1812 and how hemp was so involved in the ships, from the logs, the clothing, in between the wood as they were building the hull, the sails. And he asked somebody what the sails were made out of on the ship from 1812, and the guy says vinyl. Like, vinyl wasn't around in 1812.
They were definitely hemp. Back in the day when I was in the Navy, I was on my way to Vietnam, and I got 2 weeks in Boston, hanging out in Boston, and they didn't know what to do with me. So I went into work one Monday, I guess it was, and the boss says, Al, go over to Old Ironsides, the USS Constitution. You're going to be her OIC for a week, not her commanding officer, her officer in charge. And I said, what? He said, yeah, the OIC is going on vacation for a week, and they need an officer to stand there and smile at the tourists, and you're it. Well, let me tell you, I got to look all over that ship, and a lot of things struck me. It was beautifully done. There was probably 100 young Navy sailors working on that ship, tour guides and keeping it ship shape, if you will. And it was beautiful. It was spotless. And the thing that very much impressed me is when you went below decks where tourists were not allowed, but the crew was, there were artifacts, incredibly valuable artifacts in the captain's cabin, in the storerooms that were just there for the taking, and they were never taken. There wasn't a crew member there that ever took a thing out of that ship. But you're right. The rope, the sails, the caulking, was the uniforms, all the strapping and those type of things, that was all made from hemp. And still, there is a rope walk, a hemp rope walk at the Boston Naval Shipyard. It is still there. It still operates because Old Ironside still uses hemp rope. I don't care what the America. It's not legal in America. It's been on the Old Ironsides forever. So it's just another example. And hemp seeds. Once in a while, I was a contracting officer for the United States Navy. One of these guys that I buy stuff by the millions, billions. And one of the things I told to buy was hemp seeds. And our country I bought them, 400 metric tons of unsterilized hemp seeds. And they were brought into the United States, and they're put in what we call in the United States our pre-positioned war reserve stock. In other words, these are essential items that if we ever got into a big war or battle, we would have a stockpile of this stuff. And it's everything from gold to hemp seeds. But the point is, hemp seeds is included in this absolute must-have list. So the value of that crop in the future too, as an environmental crop, is enormous.
Big time. Yeah. Well, from my understanding, wasn't there some wars over the hemp?
I missed that one out.
Oh, I said, was there any wars? I'm trying to think that there were some wars that involved or were fighting over hemp supplies.
Well, I know in the Civil War in Kentucky, there was a Union and Confederate rather large battle called the Battle of the Hemp Bales. If you look that up, that's you'll see that war. But hemp in the United States in the late 1600s or 1700s, in Virginia, for instance, if you had a farm, you were required to go, a certain amount of your acreage had to be in hemp. If you didn't grow any hemp, you went to jail or whatever they did with you back then.
Wow, really? Eh? Because that just shows the importance of it so much that how much it was used for wars to require for people to
I'll give you another one. The first building, temporary, I admit, in San Francisco was a hemp building. What it was essentially was the clipper ships. You've all heard of the clipper ships. They were fast sailboats, if you will, big boats that would sail around. Panama Canal wasn't there. They go all the way around South America. They come up to San Francisco and they'd ditch them. They were done. They made one run and that was it. But the sails became buildings. So the first buildings in San Francisco were made from hemp. Hemp's been everywhere.
Nice.
Our military used it in World War II. It was essential. Parachute cords were hemp. Bootstraps were hemp. Belts and everything these guys carried on their canteens, that was all hemp. And the reason they used it is it didn't rot. It was strong as hell. And it was available. And of course, you know the Hemp for Victory movie?
Yes, exactly. They knew so much about it, and they turned around and demonized it. Yeah, Hemp for Victory. Yeah, I've seen that. It was part of the documentaries that I was showing back in the day as well. That was back in 2010 to about 2015. I was showing the documentaries at different cafes, and always looking for different things to show, and that was included in it. It wasn't full length thing, but it was
back in
information that was on it. What's that?
Back in '97, we produced. It was a different bunch, but we produced the first video about medical cannabis that the world ever saw. we misnamed it as far as I'm concerned. We called it Marijuana as Medicine. But we won a number of awards at national film festivals. Sundance Film Festival gave us a special category award and said, this is extraordinary. And that was another introduction of the patients, the laws, and it was 18 minutes long. We made it. It was done professionally, like you guys do. I did the narration. We had $100 million sound system we did it in, and the videography and the cuttings and all were beautiful. Everything was special. And that movie went around the world. It was shown at least on 30 different public television countries. And I was getting requests from Brazil and Nigeria and Japan. It was all over the world.
I know.
Everybody want to know what this medicine.
So what was?
Is, you know?
Yeah, we're going to go to break now.
Before I lose the point, I just want to the audience. Jack talked about hemp because it's a plant. The politicians and the talking heads will talk to you about cannabis as a drug. It's not a drug. It's a plant. It's the same plant that Jack's talking about. It's a plant. It grows in the ground. It's a plant. And yes, you can make a medicine from a plant, but it's a plant. And this whole notion of all of these people are walking around having this conversation, to me, is inane. You know, it's not a drug, Senator. It just isn't. I don't care what you think.
It's not.
And to me, if you're going to regulate it, it should be regulated like bananas or wheat. It should be turned over to the Department of Agriculture and let them deal with it like they do everything else we eat. And we make everything we eat comes from agriculture basically, and we get along real fine with them taking care of this stuff. So give it to them and get away from all this drug thing. It's just
exactly.
Anyway, just a little.
When we do our news broadcast, when they mention cannabis being a drug, we use the word medicine instead, because that's what it is.
Well, I had to work even with the cannabis movement, if you can. I don't think that exists either, but in the communications I would have with my peer group in cannabis, it took me 10 years to get them to call it cannabis. They just resisted. And I kept saying, marijuana is a slang word. Cannabis is the plant. If you're going to talk about this thing, you got to talk about what it is. It's not marijuana. It's a plant, and it's called cannabis. And actually now, as of 2014, the American Herbal Association declared cannabis an herb 9 years ago.
And it is. And it is.
Senator, it's not a drug. It's an herb. See. Anyway, just trying to drive home the point. But I hate to see the conversations denigrate the plant by making it into a drug, and these politicians think drug. It's just like they think smoke.
Stigmatized.
It's got to be as bad as tobacco smoke. It's got to be, and it isn't. It's better than tobacco smoke. But it's that mindset. It's hard to overcome.
All right, time for us to take that break. I'll be right back with my guest, Byrne, in about 3 minutes. And you're watching the Pace Radio Show. We're live here at paceradio.net and cbgtv.com.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partner 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyndonega Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
Let's share Pace everywhere. That way it can help create peace. People everywhere advocating cannabis education.
Are you looking to get your medical cannabis grow license? Limestone City Hydroponics can help patients through the process of obtaining their license to grow medical cannabis. What's that? You don't have a doctor. If you meet the medical criteria, Limestone City Hydroponics has a nurse practitioner who can assess and provide medical cannabis prescriptions. What are you waiting for? Contact Limestone City Hydroponics at limestonecityhydroponics.ca or call them at 613-548-0420.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Pace Radio is the People Advocating Cannabis Education Radio Network.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.
Welcome back, and thanks for tuning into the Pace Radio Show. Today the program is joined by my special guest, Navy veteran Al Byrne. And we've been talking about piles of stuff and the work that Al's been doing through Patients Out of Time and the other things with veteran groups and helping get access to medical cannabis. There's one thing I want to make sure that I get to, Al, before we run out of time, because we got about 20 minutes left. And I mentioned in the beginning of the broadcast that you were an author. You've written a book. I don't know if it's been released yet or not, but can you tell us about your book, what its title is, and what it's all got, what's it got to do with?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm an author almost. I think it's been printed. I got a copy of it here, but it hasn't been quote distributed. So I guess that means they got to print up a bunch of and mail them around. But it'll be on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and every other place you can buy a book. The name of it is For Country and Cannabis. For Country and Cannabis, meaning it's an autobiography. It's my story with cannabis in the military, out of the military, in the situations that I've just talked about in general terms with VMCA and NORML, all that stuff is all involved in the book. There's a lot of people involved. I wanted, it's 348 pages, so it's a real book. And there's a lot of detail. I think even people who are experts are going to read this book and go, "Wow, I didn't know that." There's a number of people that I praise for their work. There is a number of people I denigrate for their involvement in the way they did it. I don't pull any punches. The name is the name, and I use my opinion, and I wrote it down. Now the book covers, 50 years. I started with the death of my father using cannabis successfully in '67, and it ends essentially at the end of 22, 6 months ago. You got to end it, and it's a series of stories. Again, it's about my life, but my life has been rather interesting, both in and out of the military. And cannabis was one of the things that made it so interesting, because again, I saw as a young man the effects of cannabis being really nice, really great on a very sick individual.
As they say, seeing is believing. Seeing is believing, and when you see that, and I like the numbers of people who have changed their opinion on cannabis because seeing is believing is huge, and that's what's so important about sharing people's stories. But keep going.
Yeah, there's an old German proverb. It says, people believe what they see, but they also believe what they hear. So seeing is what it's saying is just what you see is what you see, dude. But anyway, we I forget where we were in the conversation now.
We're talking. You just mentioned about dealing with your dad, as like we're talking about an example of
the book. The book starts and it goes through 22. So the book just covers this 50 years. It's a recollection. I mean, I've got some dialogue in there, but it's what I think it was. I didn't write this thing for 50 years. I wrote it in 18 months, trying to recall. I had some notes, stuff that I had, kept and stuff.
Yeah.
But most of it is just it's just experiences that have stuck in my mind, individuals, again, good and bad, in the cannabis world for whatever their reasons may have been. Some really fascinating philanthropy. On the other hand, some really miserable people that I associated with, and I wish I hadn't. And in the book, I identify my mistakes in that. But it's I think I would have to recommend. This sounds ridiculous. I have to recommend this book for 3 groups of people. If you're a cannabis patient, if you're a cannabis researcher, or you're a cannabis medical clinician, you need to read this book. For one thing, I don't care what you think in any category about medical cannabis. I'm going to bet you in this book, you're going to find 8, 10, 15 things about medical cannabis you didn't know about. And that's worth the price of the book. The hubris that I have found in our U.S. medical community is not to be admired. I do call out the medical community of the United States, and I do so in Canada as well. As I pointed out earlier, the American Medical Association had authorized me to educate doctors in the United States in an accredited session, and we did so. But the AMA has never said in public, we support medical cannabis education.
It's like our Health Canada.
Well, I'm just telling you how it is down here. Now, on the other side, you have the American Nurses Association, right? They also accredit us to do that education continually. And then they passed a resolution, the whole organization, millions of nurses. They passed a resolution that said every American nurse shall be brought up to schedule on how to use medical cannabis therapeutically. And then 3 years later, they did it again. So there's this huge dichotomy between the Nursing Association of the United States, which wants cannabis, everybody should be able to use it, everybody should know how to use it, and the doctors who are still reluctant. They didn't learn it in medical school, it can't be real, or some such trivial thought.
Yeah.
So anyway, I did want to, and let me just go back to my veterans.
Sure.
I explained again that if a veteran like myself goes into a VA hospital in Florida, where I am, and I say, Doc, I got a hell of a pain in my arm, and I've been taking cannabis, but it's just not working, that's fine. He writes it down. Al's taking cannabis. Now, let's see what we can do. Let's take an x-ray, whatever the hell they do. Okay, it works. That's Florida. Now, if I'm in Kansas, and I have the same problem, and I'm a Kansas vet, and I walk into the VA hospital in Kansas, and I use the exact same sentence. Hey, dog, I use cannabis for the pain, but it's not working. He has to say to me, you have to leave the premises.
No.
You have to get off the property. And you can't come back until you've been clear of cannabis for 30 days. So I have coined a term that I'd like your audience to remember. U.S. veterans, whoever they may be, whatever war they were in, are given medical treatment in the United States of America for cannabis based on geography. They are treated for their wounds based on geography, where they live.
Yeah, you're right.
Right?
You're right.
Now, if that isn't if that's immoral, that's immoral. It's certainly unfair. A vet in Maine can be using cannabis as a treatment, and a vet in Kansas can't. It's unfair. And beyond that, it is medically ethical. It's medically unethical. Yet that's the policy of the United States of America when it deals with their veterans who are wounded or not. So I just want your audience to understand that. This is a serious problem of freedom in the United States. And the freedoms that are being affected are the veterans themselves. The women and men that put themselves out there and got hurt to begin with, they won't let them use cannabis. What the hell's that about? You know, and who won't let them use it?
Did they not threaten to take away?
Who won't let them use it?
Did they not threaten to take away veterans? Did they not threaten to take away the veterans' benefits if they found out that they were consuming cannabis? No,
that has never been threatened. Good for bringing that up. No, there is no threat. The VHA itself has put out informational videos saying that you can use cannabis in our facilities. It did it, but again, there's 50 states and only 40 of them let vets use cannabis. So I'm bitching about treatment by geography. Thinking about treatment by zip code, if you want to think of it that way, but it's just crazy. And on the other hand, let me compliment Canada and their treatment of vets. In Canada, a Canadian veteran using cannabis has the country, Canada, provide it for him or her and delivers it to their door, to their house by FedEx or UPS. Okay, and that's the way it should be.
Yeah,
in the United States, if you use it, they tell you to go home.
Yeah,
it's
at one time they actually
just pointing out.
At one time they actually paid for and supplied up to 10 grams a day for veterans, and then once the dollar value got so high, people were going like, holy smokes, you're spending all this much money on, to them, pot, and it wasn't, medicine to them. People, started raising flags on it, and they reduced it down to 3 grams for veterans. And then they allowed people to request up to 10 grams, but they're only covered for the 3 grams. And it's unfortunate they got dropped, but there is that coverage for them, which is still better than no coverage at all. And being being
And the
denied
other point
completely. At least
would
they got
be,
access.
and the other point would be, Al, while cannabis may cost a good bit of money by gram, the pharmaceuticals that it replaces weren't free.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
And that's what we said too. You're not putting out that money out on prescription drugs, but you're putting that money. The money is going into the cannabis end instead, and you're probably seeing a reduction in your pharmaceutical costs, especially because we know how it's with opiate reductions.
Yep.
Right.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. We just the Veterans Action Council. I think I told you guys earlier. We interview people of interest, education, quality about cannabis and we introduced a doctor, a PhD, who runs the Massachusetts Center for Cannabis Excellence. The University of Massachusetts has created a research arm to study cannabis, and she concentrated on veterans in her most recent work, which has just been published in a journal. I don't remember the name of it. But anyway, her conclusions from the study, which are very, very recent, were all positive for the use of cannabis for anxiety, for pain, for post-traumatic stress, for sleep. There was nowhere in her data, she's a lot of it, that showed any kind of negative anything. And that echoes. I've been interviewing veterans now for probably 15 years, 20.
Yeah.
And I've never heard of that tell me that using cannabis kept them awake at night. He or she has always said, man, I take a couple of hits just before I go to bed. And that's the first time I had 8 hours sleep in the last X number of years.
And
sleep
have you ever
is
heard?
amazing.
Have you ever heard any of them talk about? Have you ever had a veteran tell you that it made their quality of life go down?
No,
exactly.
No.
Nothing but stories about quality of life improvements.
Yeah, there's been vets that have told me that they didn't think it helped them at all. I have heard that, but I've never heard one say, that fucked me up somehow. No, I've never heard that. It was virtually always the opposite. There was some improvement. In some cases, it was amazing. Guys would use cannabis and give up alcohol. Lots of them give up nicotine. Just because all of a sudden they just don't want it anymore. They don't need it anymore, and they don't use it. And the best part is it helps them with the withdrawal symptoms. The cannabis does. So so all of that information and the talking heads will say what I just said about these people. That's just anecdotal. That's just anecdotal. Well, in the medical community, when they study a patient like that, they don't call it anecdotal. They call it a case study. They actually call it an N of 1. And okay, it's an N of 1, but listen, there are tens of thousands of N of 1s now, and they're all saying the same thing. And that's real data too. And that's the type of thing this lady at UMass is trying to push forward, that you're just looking around in the wrong places. I will remind your audience that there are 27 countries in the world that have cannabis in their pharmacopoeia, in their medical establishment. It's 27 countries.
27 countries.
So this is not an unknown. Yeah, it's not an unknown medicine. We've been using it for 5,000, 10,000 years to begin with. It's just got forgotten about for a little bit of time, but it was enough. But
it's been legal. It's been legal medicine for more years than it was illegal.
Yeah,
it's only been illegal for 100 years out of a total. It's only been it was only illegal for 100 years of its total existence, which is
I had
sad.
a University of Virginia PhD candidate that I gave a lecture to in front of a bunch of them, and she came up afterwards and said, "Hey, Mr. Byrne, how long's this thing been going on anyway?" And I said something like, I don't know, 60 years, whatever it was. And she said, "Oh, you got a long fight, sir." And I said, "What's that about?" She said, "In America, it takes 100 years for something to change." So that would mean 2039. I hope not.
I hope not. Yeah. I hope not. That's another 16 years from now. Be a lot of people that are going to suffer because of that. But no, it's well, Al, we're getting down there in the time. It's been great talking with you. We're gonna have to have you back on. I know that Tamara was disappointed that she couldn't be here tonight, and you know, you've got a lot of stories and lots of good information to share for people. Do you have? Are you still doing podcasts?
Well, yes and no. I used to do that Veterans Voices podcast with my buddy Mike Kravitz. You've heard me mention him. Mike and I have now joined with 4 other vets. Right. We've joined with 4 other vets, and under the banner now of Veterans Action Council, that's how we do the podcast. We interview these experts, just like Mike and I, when we did our work, we essentially interviewed veterans. When I did the podcast for Patients at a Time, we basically interviewed healthcare specialists with cannabis. The VAC, the Veterans Action Council, interviews both. We'll bring on veterans that are doing enormously good things for the veterans and and then we'll bring on medical cannabis experts, researchers, whoever, that are also doing good things. We want everybody to know about this stuff. So when we interview live, and then we place it on, we have a Facebook page and a YouTube page, and it's just archived there. I think we're up to interview number 68 or something now.
Nice.
So
I'll have to take a look. I'll have to take a look at that. So, all right. Shout out opportunity time. Shout out person, place, a thing, website.
Yes. Everything. We'll have websites and everything from my book, and VAC has a website, so everything's covered.
Okay, so veteransactioncouncil.org, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Other than that, that's it for now. You can find the Pace Radio Pace Radio Show. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're online. You can find us at paceradioshow.com. Let's see what else. We can thank our sponsors, the friendly, helpful folks at legacy420.com, Limestone City Hydroponics.ca, and the Campbellford Lifestyle Shop in Campbellford, Ontario. Huge thank you to our guest, Navy veteran and patient advocate, Alan Byrne. Al, it's been great talking to you, and I look forward to the next time we do. And plus, a big thank you to our listeners for tuning into their program. Thank you, and good night.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.